second if you wait. I fly like paper, get high like planes. If you catch me at the border, I got visas in my name. If you come around here, I'll make them all day. I get one down in a second if you wait. Sometimes I think sitting on trains. Every stop I get to, I'm clocking that game. Everyone's a winner, we're making our fame. Bonafide hustler, making my name. Sometimes I think sitting on trains. Every stop I get to, I'm clocking that game. Everyone's a winner, we're making our fame. Bonafide hustler, making my name. All I wanna do is take your money. 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 Pirates, skulls and bones, sticks and stones and weed and bombs. Running when we hit 'em. Lethal poison for the system. Pirates, skulls and bones, sticks and stones and weed and bombs. Running when we hit 'em. Lethal poison for the system. No one on the corner has swagger like us. Hit me on my banner, prepaid wireless. We pack and deliver like UPS trucks. Already going hard, just pumping that gas. No one on the corner has swagger like us. Hit me on my banner, prepaid wireless. We pack and deliver like UPS trucks. Already going hard, just pumping that gas. All I wanna do is take your money. 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 MIA, third world democracy. Yeah, I got more records in the KGB. So no funny business. You already are. Some murder. Some let go. Some murder. Some let go. All I wanna do is take your money. All I wanna do is take your money. All I wanna do is take your money. All I wanna do is take your money.
You love the people that love you. You hear the music they move to. You give your all to the fall through. But you don't know, you don't know, you don't know, you don't know. You love the people that love you. You hear the music they move to. You give your all to the fall through. But you don't know, you don't know, you don't know, you don't know, you just got off work, huh? Another night feel like the worst one. You didn't even count your tips yet, but you can tell that it ain't no big step. I don't see why you so nice to customers. Lives, don't fight, just keep your lips stiff and get that money, it's the weekend shifts. But why they all gotta be freaks? Wish they would just eat and leave and keep their eyes to themselves. Already insecure, don't need any help. You can blame the pride that makes you hold your anger inside, but deep down, you wanna curse them all. Jerk off dirt ball. You love the people that love you. You hear the music they move to. You give your all to the fall through. But you don't know, you don't know, you don't know, you don't know. You love the people that love you. You hear the music they move to. You give your all to the fall through. But you don't know, you don't know, you don't know, you don't know, you. Nah, attitude check, you still show up, you haven't quit yet. And even when you meet, sweet they still treat you like a piece of meat. Outrageous. Each day this clock tick-tock and you still a waitress. Trying to pay them student loans and the lights and the phone and the food and the home. And you ain't quite broke, but you couldn't afford that place on your own. Got a roommate to split the rent with. Now you never feel independent, and everything seems so hollow. Cause after work, where'd that smile go? Better bring it back tomorrow. Now pick up the pace and you might make door close. Perfect, last call then some. Flirting, sexual tension. Surfing through them men, cause they all searching for that bent one. But just one to bend, and you look like you could be my friend. With a smile like that, I gotta flirt. Girl, you look like you just got off work. You love the people that love you. You hear the music they move to. You give your all to the fall through. But you don't know, you don't know, you don't know, you don't know. You love the people that love you. You hear the music they move to. You give your all to the fall through. But you don't know, you don't know, you don't know, you don't know you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Erica Gonzalez, and I'll be your host for the day. Really quickly, I wanted to go ahead and mention the posters that you might have just seen if you were here early in the waiting room. They are a project from our presenter, Dr. Ling, called Commune. Commune is a research project that Dr. Ling led to create a cool, hipster, tobacco-free culture. And we will be putting the link to these posters in the chat box below, okay? So if you're interested, you could check it out. So really quickly, before I start off, I'm gonna insert a poll in your screen. It should be popping up around right now. And if you could just go ahead and get through it while I talk, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and start off by talking about myself. I'm a second-year respiratory therapy student at MJC and have always had a passion for helping others. This passion kickstarted my interest for working in the medical field and landed me where I am today. I'm also a member of the Respiratory Care Club at MJC, a member of YAF, Young Adults Fighting Tobacco, and an intern for Stand Against Big Tobacco. As a member of all of these coalitions, it's very important for me to spread awareness about the risk factors that come with smoking tobacco that are like e-cigarettes or cigarettes in general, or both. So recently, it has become an even greater risk of smoking tobacco and being diagnosed with COVID. So research demonstrates that being diagnosed with COVID-19 is 5 times more likely in young people who have smoked e-cigarettes, and up to 7 times more likely in people who have smoked cigarettes, and the traditional cigarettes and the e-cigarettes, when compared to those who haven't smoked at all. Now, I really want to stress this because researchers did not expect these results. And smoking is not only linked to the exposure of getting COVID because of the negative effects that it comes with smoking, but also because it has become a common practice to share your e-cigarettes with friends, thus increasing the probability of you getting COVID-19. With that being said, I'd like to turn it over now to Katie Moose. She is our project director of Stand Against Big Tobacco. Katie?
Thanks, Erica. Hi, everybody. I just have a quick little intro, but before I do that, we do have a gift card raffle giveaway. So we have 2 $50 Kohl's gift cards that we're gonna raffle, and we have 2 $25 Subway gift cards that we're gonna raffle. And my colleague Fareha here has done the drawing of the names, so I'm gonna pass it over to her.
Hi everyone, so I'm gonna announce the winners. If you hear your name, please say in the chat if you're here, okay? The first winner is Sydney Griffin, and I hope she's here, which I think I checked the participants list and she was here. The second one is Courtney. Okay, yeah, she's here. Courtney Clemens, I think that's how you pronounce your last name. Yeah, she's also here. And the next one is Lorena Barajas, if that's how you pronounce it. And the last one is Miria Munoz.
Yay. What was the last one more time?
It was Miria Munoz. I can write it in the chat. It's
Oh, yay. Okay.
yeah, she's here.
Excellent. Okay. Congratulations to our big winners. So we have your email addresses from when you registered. So we will contact you so that we can send you those gift cards. So thanks for joining us. I also wanted to mention the fantastic turnout we have at this webinar today. We have 65 participants with us today, and what a great turnout. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be having more of these webinars later in the semester, so we hope you join us for that as well. So like Erica said, my name's Katie. I work for the STAND project. And to all of the young people that are in this webinar right now, if you ask any older person about smoking, they will tell you that the norms around smoking have changed drastically over the past couple of decades. In fact, since the 1990s, the percentage of the population in California that smokes cigarettes has gone from about a quarter of the population down to under 10% now. But why this drastic change? Is it because people finally understood how bad for health and how deadly cigarette smoking was? No, that information came out in the 1960s, and yet smoking rates remained high for decades. In fact, when I was in high school in the late 90s, about a third of my classmates were smoking cigarettes, and it's no wonder that I smoked too. In fact, I smoked for 18 years, and I never imagined that I would end up in tobacco control as a career. I actually used to smoke in the same smoking area at Modesto Junior College that is still there to this day. You know, that table that's right outside of the student center that's in the middle of campus that everybody sits and smokes and vapes at least before the campus closure. I used to smoke there too, back in the 90s. So a big part of the drastic change in smoking rates is because of all the new smoke-free areas. Most college campuses are smoke and tobacco free. Many parks are smoke-free, hospitals are smoke-free, schools are smoke-free. None of this was the case when I was in high school. All of these smoke-free spaces change social norms and expectations around smoking. People don't see it as something that people should be doing around others, especially children and sick people. And along with all those changing social expectations, smoking rates have plummeted. When I started smoking in the 90s, I knew it caused cancer. I knew it was horrible for my health. But I had other, more relevant reasons to start smoking at the time, like my teenage desire to take risks and live dangerously, and my desire to make friends who also wanted to take risks and live dangerously. I've been quit now for a few years, and I can tell you that I still crave nicotine and smoking from time to time, but smoke-free spaces and changing social norms really does help me to remain smoke-free. I'm gonna pass it back over to Erica now. Thanks for hearing me out.
Thank you, Katie, and congratulations to our winners. With that being said, I'd like to introduce to you all Dr. Pamela Ling. Dr. Pamela Ling is an internal medicine specialist as well as a primary doctor. Dr. Ling focuses her research on understanding how tobacco marketing encourages the youth and young adults to begin using tobacco. Dr. Pamela Ling.
Great. Thank you very much, Erica. I'm going to share my screen and my sound. All right, let's see if this works. I'm going to play from the start. Okay, can you guys see? Well,
Right now it looks black, like a black square.
black. Not. How about that? Okay. Give me a thumbs up if you can see the slides.
Oh, there we go. Yes.
Okay.
I
Does it
can
look
see
like
it
one
now.
slide or does it look like presenter view?
It's one slide.
Great. I just prioritize the internet. I'm competing with two kids who are schooling from home. So if you either Katie or Erica or Fareha, like, make some body motions or something if this is not working.
Dr. Ling,
okay.
before
So thank you
start,
much for having me as part of this. Yes.
I just wanted to mention, if anybody has any questions along the way, along the presentation, just feel free to put them in the chat and then we'll address them at the end, okay? Thank you.
Okay. Questions in the chat box. All right. Yeah, I'll try to leave about 10 minutes at the end for questions, though. Fantastic. So we're going to talk about ticketing and counter. I first just have to acknowledge my group. So the science you're going to see today is the work of a huge team of people, who have contributed a lot. So I wanted to thank them. As our funder. So I want to, just like Katie shared a little bit of phone back from the 90s, I would share with you a little bit from the 90s, which is a time ago. So when I was a medical student, I was on Real World San Francisco. And so that Asian woman in the middle of this cast photo is me. And you guys, I think the Real World is still on television these days, but it's a reality TV show where you live in a house for 6 months and they film you and then they make it into like a soap opera on MTV. So I actually did that show when I was in medical school. And though the Real World is mostly known for, young people being drunk in a hot tub, our show was known, it was set in San Francisco, and it was known in the 90s mostly because of my roommate, Pedro Zamora. So Pedro Zamora was 22 years old and an AIDS educator, and he was one of the first young people living with AIDS that was on like mainstream television at the time. This was before there was any treatment for HIV, and there was a lot of stigma associated with HIV infection. And the reason why Pedro went on the Real World was basically because he got infected with HIV when he was younger than 17 years old. And the health classes that he took never really communicated to him that he was at risk. And he really felt like in order to reach other young people like him, the health messages needed to be in a place where people would actually see them and done in a way that young people can relate to. And so for him, being on MTV was one way of getting that message out there. Pedro was really quite immunocompromised at the time we were on the show. And he actually passed away from AIDS less than 6 months after we moved out. But people still remember this show now, like 25 years later, because of his story and what he shared about his own life and living with HIV. This principle of having a health message in a place like MTV has actually been pretty inspiring to me throughout my career. I've always been interested in health messages and how to get the right message to the right people. The kind of modeling that Pedro did by being on MTV, showing what it's like to actually live with HIV, was taken up by some other HIV prevention campaigns at the time, which again featured young people sharing their stories. Also during the 90s, I did a bunch of work in needle exchange, which again was, and we did some campaigns at that time around preventing overdose with a very harm reduction framing. I see my internet connection is unstable. I may turn on my camera if we have to. But again, a message like this, which talks about not shooting drugs alone, again, is a really specific message, right, for a specific person who's using drugs, trying to avoid overdose. So it's not a message for television for everybody. But putting the right message in the right place is something that we do in public health all the time. So this is also something that marketers understand really well. So a lot of marketing is about understanding your target audience and making a message that's tailored to them. And a lot of times the messages are not necessarily based on information. So just like Katie talked about why didn't people stop smoking when they knew it would cause lung cancer? That was in the 60s, right? A lot of reasons why people do things they know they shouldn't has to do with understanding marketing and motivations. An example of this was an old campaign now called the Got Milk campaign. But, you know, initially a lot of milk marketing was around how milk is good for you and it builds strong bones and strong teeth. The Got Milk campaign was about highlighting moments in your life when you really, really just want a glass of milk. So they did a bunch of ad campaigns that were around like when you've eaten a whole bunch of cookies or you had a really dry peanut butter sandwich, then you really want milk. And just capitalizing on those relatable moments was kind of the heart of a campaign to help to get people to drink milk. In public health, we often call this social marketing. So this is, again, the use of commercial marketing techniques or strategies to promote a healthy behavior. So it makes basically a socially beneficial behavior like not smoking or wearing your seatbelt or wearing a helmet, promoting that behavior using some of these marketing tactics. And I went to public health school and learned about how this is done. And then kind of on a whim, answered an ad that Stan Glantz put in on email saying he was looking for someone to do some research on tobacco marketing. And I had been doing a bunch of HIV prevention, but I thought, well, I want to understand social marketing, which means I want to understand marketing. And it turns out that, you know, tobacco companies are pretty good at marketing since they've been convincing people to do something that kills you for a long time. So I thought I was going to study tobacco marketing for 1 year. And, you know, 20 years later, I'm still doing it. So I guess the lesson there is be open to opportunity you might not have thought of initially because it may open up a new career for you. So why is smoking important? This is still the leading preventable cause of death in the United States and the world. And it's really a youth problem also because we still have almost 4,000 young people who start smoking every day in the United States. And we know that almost everybody who smokes cigarettes starts before they're 26 years old. The vast majority of folks start before they're 21, but really if you get to 26 years old and you haven't started smoking, it's very unlikely that you will. We also know that between 1 in 3 and one of 2 smokers eventually die of smoking-related disease. So it's the most deadly consumer product ever put on the marketplace, and continues to be so. And we also know that for young people, smoking cessation is also important and really underused. So our research has shown that young adults are actually just as interested in quitting as older adults. And that if you actually are able to quit before you're 30, you avoid most of the morbidity and mortality associated with smoking. So there's a real opportunity to quit early. Young people are interested in quitting, and they are equally likely to try to quit as an older adult. But the difference is they really just don't use the kind of, they don't use doctors, they don't use kind of the evidence-based smoking cessation resources so much. Most of them will just kind of, you know, most of it's cold turkey. quit on your own. You know, I had a young person say like his quitting strategy was to tell his friend to punch him every time that he saw him smoking. And that was the quit plan. So a lot of times young people don't necessarily have access to resources or use them to try to quit. This is evidenced by, if you look at in San Francisco where I do my research, you know, we look at the number of young adults that call the San Francisco quit line per month. This is some slightly old data. You know, the most we got was 5 calls from the young adults, and sometimes we get 0. So there's, again, really kind of low utilization. So quit lines are, you know, an evidence-based, well accepted way to help people quit smoking, but young people really don't use them. So then why, if you want to be interested in young people smoking, would you study the tobacco industry? And part of this is because tobacco companies are really good at what they do, right? They are the world's experts in smoking. They're the world's experts in how to change people's behavior. And they're really good at branding, you know? So even on this picture, without showing you a logo or a brand, I wonder if you can guess what brand of cigarettes this is. Most people would know that this is Marlboro, right? Just because they've associated the cowboy with the Marlboro brand so strongly that a picture of a cowboy doesn't even need to have a logo to tell you what it is. And that's sort of the art of what the marketers here do. Another reason to study tobacco marketing is we have a data source. So UCSF has the largest collection of previously secret tobacco industry documents in the world. So this is basically when the major tobacco companies in the US were taken to court. Part of the settlement of those court cases was there was money, but there was also an agreement that the companies would take their internal documents and make them available to the public. And that's because part of the lawsuits were around the industry knew that cigarette smoking killed people. They knew about nicotine being addictive. They knew how to market to young people, and they lied about it. You know, they basically acted like they didn't know these things. And the lawsuits were around really this deception of the public. So part of the remedy for that was to say, you have to take all your internal files and put them on the internet for anybody to see. And so UCSF has a huge public collection of these documents. There's like 90 million pages, and you can search them just like you do a Google search, where you go to the website here, you type in any topic related to tobacco, and you'll get documents from the files of tobacco companies that will show you marketing plans or what they thought about that topic. So I've spent a long time doing this kind of research. This is an example of a tobacco document. This is from Philip Morris, which is the company that makes Marlboro cigarettes. And this is an example of a quote from a document where they talk about how today's teenagers, tomorrow's potential regular customers. So this is a document about marketing to kids. And they also notice that the 10 years following the teenage years is where your average daily consumption goes up to what they thought was ideal, which is a pack a day of smoking. So they knew not only is it important to get young people to smoke the first cigarette, but it's also important to kind of cultivate experimentation and bring it all the way through to nicotine addiction. This is another document from R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company. This is the company that makes Camel cigarettes. And this is about talking about young adults and why they're important for marketing. And this document talked about how no matter what generation you're in, young adults face a lot of change, right? Often you take new jobs, you go off to college, you enlist in the military, or you move out of your parents' house. And those changes are kind of stressful, and they also cause a lot of transition. And the tobacco company thought that that's the perfect time to introduce smoking, you know, as part of your new social group or as part of belonging. You know, the idea of having the smoking spot at the college is a perfect opportunity for tobacco companies to say, you know, as you're learning what it is to be part of the college community, why not introduce smoking as part of that? And then the part of the marketing that I've spent a lot of time thinking about is this idea of psychographics. So we often will tailor public health campaigns to demographic groups by age, maybe by race, ethnicity, or by sex if we're being extra sophisticated. Our marketers really take a lot more factors into account when developing marketing campaigns. So they'll ask about your activities, your hopes and dreams, your future aspirations, what kind of people you hang out with, and they use all of that information to develop tailored campaigns. So Philip Morris Tobacco Company did this just with young adult male smokers, for example. So this is a study they did in the 1990s. The makers of Marlboro interviewed over 1,000 young adult male smokers aged 18 to 24. They asked them over an hour all kinds of questions about your hopes, dreams, fears, attitudes, perceptions of the brand, activities, friends, and then they used all this information to make different segments of young adult male smokers. So they recognized very early on that not all young adult male smokers even are the same, and they gave the segments these cute names. So they would say, you're not just a male smoker, you're a macho hedonist, or a 50s throwback, or an enlightened go-getter, or a new age man. And just to give you an idea what that's like, they would say macho hedonists, when they did their interviews, macho hedonists were more likely than the other three segments, which are in there, to agree like it's important to have fun, I crave excitement, I like outrageous people, money equals success, it's important my date is attractive. Go to parties, less likely to be bicycling or politically active. And they have really kind of pro-smoking attitudes. They say, I like smoking, Miranda smokers, and they don't use coupons and things like that. They don't take advantage of promotions. The brand that's most popular for macho hedonists was actually Marlboro Light. It's a kind of masculine brand image, and it was lights because macho hedonists are younger, and younger people smoke more light cigarettes. They're easier to inhale. The brand that Philip Morris was worried about was Joe Camel. So they were worried about the Camel cigarettes, which had this cartoon character, Joe Camel, who was portrayed as being even more macho and hedonistic and fun. And R.J. Reynolds here portrays the Marlboro man as like a boring loner in the background there. So in the 90s, these two tobacco companies were really fighting for macho hedonist young men using that kind of imagery. And then just for contrast, the 50s throwbacks think of themselves as much more average, everyday people. They're not flirtatious or troublemakers or rebellious. So have a very different attitude. May still smoke cigarettes, but for different reasons. So one reason why the tobacco companies then do a lot of lifestyle promotions is because they're thinking a lot about attitudes and values that make these different segments different from each other. So one example of this is that the tobacco companies have spent a lot of time doing promotions in bars and nightclubs. And again, this is thought of as an opportunity to introduce smoking as part of adult social life. The tobacco companies were also starting to get some heat in the 90s because marketing to kids became an issue. There was a study that came out where like 3 to 6 year olds could recognize Joe Camel, just like they could recognize Mickey Mouse. And so as a bunch of activities into bars and nightclubs, because they said, well, everyone's an adult in a bar, so we can do whatever we want. So this increased a lot during the 90s. And they still go on today, even in California where there's smoke-free bars, they still sponsor bar parties. So this is a photo from a party sponsored by Camel cigarettes. The bar promotions, they'll do band sponsorship. They sponsored fashion shows. This was a promotional event for Camel number 9. So in addition to Joe Camel, the R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company did this Camel for Girls brand they called Camel number 9, which was supposed to evoke like Chanel number 5 or Love Potion number 9. And at the parties, you could also get a massage. I think this is a massage picture. You could also get this goodie bag, which had like a purse that was in the shape of a record and lip gloss and jewels for your cell phone and a bedazzled lighter. very adult appealing stuff. And from the internal documents, again, the reason why the tobacco companies really focused on bars was not because every young person goes to a bar, but because the bars were thought to be the trend leaders. So they actually focused a whole bar and club program on, you know, the 50 most progressive popular night spots in the 8 or 9 most progressive leading cities in the US. And all of that was thought to be a way to sort of create a trend through the bars. So the long-term goal of the program was to increase mainstream use in the mainstream smoking market, and to just perceive that the Camel brand was this hip, cool thing that just happened on its own. The other advantage to promotions in bars is that it solidifies this connection between smoking and drinking. So if you've ever talked to young people, they'll often say that smoking and drinking goes together like peanut butter and jelly, or it goes together like milk and cookies. That association between smoking and drinking is something tobacco companies have been aware of for a long time, and a lot of the marketing is actually designed to help reinforce those connections between smoking and drinking. If you've ever counseled someone to try to stop smoking, they'll often tell you that they cannot have a drink. If they have a drink, they'll go back to smoking. And that's because that association is so strong. So when thinking about tobacco industry marketing, it's easy to get kind of depressed because they are like the Godzilla of marketing. They have incredible power. They've been doing it for a long time. And they have tons of resources to do these sophisticated studies. You know, in contrast, we are kind of like the little Bambi who's, you know, out there trying to do a good thing, but with a lot less firepower. Sort of some of the work that I have done has been trying to take the tools of the Godzilla and use them for public health, to give Bambi a little more power, hopefully not create a monster of Bamzilla, but to really try to use some of these marketing strategies to improve public health programs. So I'll show you a couple examples of that. So one tactic that we've used is this idea of market segmentation. So I've worked with an agency called Rescue that basically focuses on doing social marketing types of campaigns for young people. And they work on the same idea that not all young people are the same, and not everyone smokes for the same reasons. And in our research, we don't have time to sit down with someone for an hour and go over all your hopes and dreams and friends and activities. Because, you know, when you're talking to young people in a bar, you've got maybe 5 minutes, right, to get some data. So what Rescue has done is they've developed a quick way of figuring out what segments or what peer groups people belong to through using pictures. So we did a whole bunch of qualitative research asking young people to sort pictures into piles and talk about piles of people who would hang out together and talk about those groups. And then Rescue can help use that data to develop campaigns that are tailored towards different segments. Kind of like Philip Morris doesn't talk publicly about the macho hedonists. We don't use the labels like partier or homebody or young professional publicly. It's just a quick way of figuring out who you're targeting your campaign to. So you can actually use a really quick survey instrument like this, where you can say, pick the 3 people from this array who are most likely to be your friends. Pick the 3 people who are least likely to be your friends. And if you pick number 15 or number 10, you get hipster points. You know, if you pick number 16 or number 21, you get partier points. And those affiliations, again, they have all the limitations of judging people by looking at a picture, but it's a very quick way to get an idea of like which subculture you kind of hang out with. And if you use that segmentation and you look at smoking rates, it really differentiates smokers from non-smokers very efficiently. So it's a very quick and easy instrument. On this graph, this is in the San Francisco Bay Area. So on average, 15% of young adults are current smokers in the Bay Area. But if you're someone who picks the pictures that say you affiliate with the hipster subculture or the hip hop subculture, or country, right, you're much more likely, the smoking rates are double or more for those groups. Whereas if you pick pictures of people that look like homebodies, which is just nice, or young professionals, you're much less likely to smoke. So, so again, these peer crowd associations are strongly associated with smoking. If you also look at within each group who goes to bars, more than half of all the groups, more than half go to bars all the time. So bars are still like a very efficient way to reach smokers. And the campaign I'm going to show you was focused on hipsters. And that's because hipsters in this study had the second highest rates of smoking. And we were replicating a study from San Diego where actually hipsters had the highest rates. So in the Bay Area, hip hop was higher, but we already had a brand for hipsters. So we went with hipsters. In case you don't know what a hipster is, this is a picture from the internet. Which shows you what a hipster is. Again, it's a stereotyping kind of a thing, but it's just a quick way to say this was kind of the subculture that the brand was created for. Being hipster is also strongly associated with smoking. So if you put up a picture of a hipster and a partier together and you ask people to pick the smoker, they'll tend to pick the hipster. And then we did a bunch of qualitative research with hipsters, and this was started in San Diego. So a lot of it was talking to folks there about really, did they care about smoking? If they wanted to quit smoking, what would be motivating? And we heard some things like hipsters were really perceived as the smokers, really valued things like the local art and local music scene. Also very concerned about wannabes and people who are not really part of their group. And so if the health department came in and kind of pretended or tried to be really hipster, that would have been very bad strategy, because they would sniff you out right away that you're not really you're not really a hipster, you're just trying. And there's a lot of skepticism about not being authentic. So what we ended up doing was hiring a bunch of local artists to really create the messaging rather than pretend or try to be as hip as they were. Experiential meant that they knew a lot of facts about tobacco and said, I've heard all the science, but I really need to experience stuff for myself. So you could tell me this is bad for me, but if I haven't felt it, I don't really believe it. And then they did not really care about the health effects of tobacco. It was more that they did care about things like social justice, anti-corporate sentiment being bought out, being sold out to the man, and they did care about things like the environment and animals and other social justice issues. Cigarette brands that target hipsters are things like Camel, targeted to the Haight-Ashbury district of San Francisco. And so kind of to compete with the Camel brand, Rescue created this brand, Commune, and the brand was designed to compete with Camel and appeal to hipsters in that way. So I'm going to try to show you this video of what this was about. Let's see if it plays.
Musicians, designers, DJs, who are all taking a stand to fight against big tobacco.
It's a great community doing some really awesome events nationally. Brings a variety of different artists together as well as different kinds of people.
If you're an artist and you're into culture, you know, whether it's music or fashion, and you just want to be around like-minded people, I think it's the place to go.
How you're kind of fighting this big industry in a way without being so aggressive and so forceful with it, but more just trying to kind of expose truths in a way and do it in a creative way, you know, something that people can relate to.
Support local artists and take a stand against big tobacco. Join the Commune.
So the Commune brand was designed to be a movement. It was put forward as like kind of like Nike means something or Apple sort of means something more than computers. Commune was designed to mean a movement of local artists and musicians taking a stand against big tobacco and their presence in the scene. So it was positioning big tobacco as wannabes, and then using a lot of to create the magic. Tobacco companies have done. Commune sponsored a bunch of events in bars and nightclubs. They did a social media campaign. We collected contact cards, and they did some direct mail as also. And initially, it was just seen as a local brand that sponsored free events, and then the hired artists were the ones that we gave a bunch of anti-tobacco facts to and let them create whatever message was inspiring to them about tobacco. And what we found and what you saw from the posters that were shown in the webinar, all of those are art created by artists in California, and most of them are something to do with the social justice issue. So tobacco production relating to hunger, because some countries, they encourage people to grow tobacco instead of connecting tobacco production to global warming or deforestation, animal testing in development of cigarettes, impact of tobacco on the environment, some ad busting, so questioning National American Spirit, which has super high levels of nicotine, rethinking the Marlboro Man in a new way, and then sometimes lesser known health facts like smoking causing impotence. As part of this, also, we held smoking cessation groups in a bar, and part of that was because part of the campaign was designed to give social support to non-smoking hipsters, and we found there was a lot of hipster leaders actually were smokers, but they wanted to quit. They had been smoking since they were teenagers, and so we started holding some smoking cessation counseling groups in the bar, and they did it in a very public way where they would follow their progress on Facebook and post about it. And we did small financial incentives, and we got a counselor from the Quit Line to come hang out in the bar and provide counseling to people who wanted to chat about their quit plan. What I was in charge of was evaluating this to say, like, does throwing parties in the bar actually work to help people quit smoking? And the National Cancer Institute funded us to do a big study where we had these events happening in 2 cities in California. We had another brand called Havoc, which I don't have time to tell you about, but it was a partier brand, mostly more like electronic dance music oriented brand that was in Albuquerque and Oklahoma City. The health departments in these states had decided to invest in this, and they were the ones who paid for the campaigns. And then we collected data in all these cities along with LA, which was the control for Commune, Tucson and Nashville, which were the control cities for Albuquerque and Oklahoma City. So what we did was we did time location sampling, which means we took random samples of people attending hipster bars over time before and during the campaigns. So rather than just go to the event and ask people, did you like the event? We randomly sampled from the bars throughout the time, so you get a more generalizable and representative sample of bar patrons. And we have published lots of studies. So we've done 4 pilot studies and 1 controlled studies of these interventions. And all of them have shown significant decreases in smoking. The one we just published last year shows that LA is the control city, that's the red, and San Diego, we've been running this campaign for a long time. So San Diego consistently stayed lower than LA. It had started lower because the campaign had been there. And then in San Francisco, we started a new campaign. San Francisco started higher than LA, and then significantly increased where LA basically stayed. Research. I want to say that the FDA has taken up this idea of segmented marketing and applied it So the FDA has sponsored campaigns. They have a general market campaign called The Real Cost for teenagers, but then they have focused campaigns for hip hop and for country. And those are Fresh Empire and Down and Dirty. Rescue does both of those. And those are, again, highly tailored to specific high-risk subcultures. So this has been adopted nationally. And then locally in San Francisco, what we did was our cancer center wanted to do something locally in San Francisco about and liver cancer, and then our group is the tobacco group. So we focus on tobacco-related cancers. My colleague Danielle Ramo developed the smoking cessation groups that you do on Facebook. We applied the commune branding to that and started promoting this as the commune smoke-free soap, which is basically a way of packaging the Facebook groups where you can quit smoking with a group on Facebook. We rebranded the posts every day for 90 days to post on Facebook, and you're asked to click on it. And we redesigned the post to get a little more like, instead of rating yourself from 1 to 10 on confidence, you rate yourself from meh to hell yeah. And we did some design changes that they were a little more hipster and a little bit more cool. What we found was before accessing this, I showed you this in the beginning, maybe 5 people called the quit line. Ever since we've implemented this on Facebook, we've had many, many more young people in the Bay Area enrolling in and joining these smoking cessation groups on Facebook. So this has gone through over the years. So just to kind of wrap up what this is about then, what we've learned from studying the tobacco industry is tobacco among young adults is important. This is a really high-risk group, often missed by traditional efforts, and bars are an efficient way to reach young people. You can use marketing strategies to discourage tobacco use, and these kind of creative interventions are feasible, and they have shown significant decreases in smoking. They've also shown significant decreases in binge drinking, which we don't message about it, but we monitor it, and for some reason the binge drinking always goes down before the smoking. It may be easier to stop binge drinking than quit smoking. This has been adopted. The segmentation technique has been adopted across other states and by the FDA. And we're hoping now to make smoking cessation cooler, doing the same technique. I did want to make one final comment about Godzilla, and that's that, you think Godzilla is defeated and went away, and then all the movies show like, we go along and then Godzilla comes back worse than ever before. And I think the new Godzilla we're looking at, right, are these new challenges around electronic cigarettes, the vaping, the flavors. The new pod vapes have incredibly high levels of nicotine. It's the new challenge. A lot of what we did was really focused on cigarette smoking. And we need new work now to do new products. We also have with the new product Godzilla trying to remake himself. I'm the kinder Godzilla. A lot of it put forward like harm reduction. So Philip Morris has reframed themselves. They fund this foundation for a smoke-free world, saying that we're doing harm reduction. These new products are safer than smoking, and they really try to rebrand themselves. Whereas, what we really know is that still for tobacco companies, they're still Godzilla, they're still trying to make money, and they still make most of their money off of cigarettes. And so a lot of the harm reduction talk is designed to distract from the fact that their core business is the same, and they're still oh
my goodness, I think we lost her.
I got cut off.
You're back.
Yeah, cut you off.
I got cut off. I'm just showing the last 2 images. This is one you can feel like you're Sisyphus trying to climb the mountain. It's very hard. But I also feel like young people have a lot of creativity, a lot of energy, and also really devoted to the truth and calling out the tobacco companies for what they are. And so I've just found this to be an incredibly inspiring and fun area to be in, making trouble for tobacco companies. And if you want to join us in our research or get involved in this, we'd welcome it. So that is the end. I will stop the sharing. So, okay. Hopefully, I know my internet's a little unstable, so hopefully most of that came through.
All right, thank you, Dr. Ling, for such an informative presentation. So now we're going to open up to questions. I have a few in the chat box and then a few in the Q&A section. I'm going to start off with the Q&A section. The first one is, how did Edward Bernays influence target marketing in vulnerable populations?
Edward Bernays is one of like the kind of key figures, right, in early marketing. I think part of this was around really understanding how culture and marketing go together, right? So Edward Bernays was one of the people who, particularly early on around marketing to women, was really instrumental. I think that they ended up, getting things like women marching in the Easter Parade with torches of cigarettes as torches of freedom. In the New York Easter Parade was an Edward Bernays thing. Getting the popular colors for fashion to be the colors of Lucky Strike cigarette brand was like an Edward Bernays thing. So I think a lot of thinking about how you marry together culture and marketing was very much an Edward Bernays thing. I think in terms of vulnerable populations, what you see a lot of that is happening around using music in marketing. So particularly for the African American community and people of color.
I think she might have frozen. Dr. Ling, try stopping your video and see if that helps with the internet connection. While we're waiting for Dr. Ling's internet to come back up, and we have a few more questions.
They're all frozen for me right now.
Oh, Dr. Ling, there we go. I'm thinking that hiding your video might help.
Okay.
You're back now.
Okay.
Yeah, I heard most of your description of the was it Edward?
Edward Bernays stuff, yes.
Yes, so maybe we can go to the next question. I do have a poll that I'm gonna launch because I want people to take it before anybody thinks about leaving. So
okay.
Take the poll, but also continue with the questions, please, Erica.
Okay, the next question is, why the name commune?
Oh, yeah, that was actually done through focus testing. So I think they came up with a bunch of different names, and the young people that we talked to like that name the best. So I think it was supposed to evoke kind of like we're all in this together, kind of a collective sort of thing, and a movement that involves like all of us, to community kind of all together. But that was the name that tested best.
Okay, next question is, was making the documents public part of the master settlement agreement, and do they still have to submit their things to the UCSF?
Yes, so part of the master settlement agreement it was part of it. That's not the only settlement that made documents available, but it's the biggest one. There was, and then as part of the Department of Justice case against the tobacco companies, that case, which came after the master settlement agreement, increased the amount of time that tobacco companies have to continue to put their documents out to the public. So there will be some end date on that, but there's still a lot of documents to go through. The hard thing is nowadays, like things like e-cigarette companies that aren't part of a tobacco company don't necessarily have, they don't have to put any documents out. So some of the newest products are hard to investigate in the documents. Although, you know, since Philip Morris bought a whole bunch of Juul, you know, you can kind of say that Philip Morris is doing their same old tactics, even with a new product.
Next question is, if you published anything with the quality research on young adult categories, or just use it to create ads?
We have published some papers that talk about using these kind of categories just to understand who's smoking, and also using other tobacco products like smokeless tobacco and e-cigarettes. So I can send a couple of papers, if you're interested, I can send copies of a couple of papers about that to the organizers if you guys want to read them.
Yeah, we can. We're going to also send out a link to this webinar that has been recorded and put it on YouTube. So we can send the link to the YouTube recording and then also the research articles to everybody that registered.
Okay, cool.
And our last question, it just popped up in the chat room. It says, as a physician, do you routinely screen for HIV risk factors and also use tobacco? Or also tobacco use, sorry.
I don't use tobacco. We do, yeah, I do routinely screen for HIV risk factors, and we are also supposed to screen for any tobacco use. I would say most physicians will ask about smoking, but when it comes to like smokeless tobacco or e-cigarettes and vaping, that becomes much more spotty. Like, I'm real interested in vaping, so I always ask about it, but you know, a lot of doctors may not necessarily ask about it. And again, like HIV screening, it should be part of our regular general prevention, but and I would say a lot of times what we do is ask, but then don't do really good in terms of counseling or support. That's where things take more time and where that kind of breaks down. But even in the medical records that we do on the computer now, there's like no checkbox for vaping, right? And for young people, like way more vaping than smoking cigarettes. And our systems take like years to catch up to, you know, to where behavior is now. So we're really missing a lot of data on things like that.
And then that same user asked whether your patients are privately insured or Medi-Cal folks accessing UCSF care.
Yeah, it's about, in the UCSF clinic where I work, it's about 50-50. So we have I think about half are private, maybe 40% private. And then we have about half are Medi-Cal or Medicare patients. They usually have some kind of insurance, though. I think if you have zero insurance and you can't get on anything, they're more at the county hospital, which is where I trained. So I love working there. But we do see a lot of Medi-Cal patients.
All right, it looks like that was all the questions. I just wanted to say thank you for everybody who joined us, and thank you, Dr. Ling. Yeah.
Tap my video so I can wave. Yay.
Thank you, everybody. Katie, you're on mute.
I was just saying thank you, Dr. Ling, and bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.